If you're trying to emulate somebody in the college football world, there are few people better to do that than follow what Nick Saban did. Obviously, things went really well for Nick Saban during his college football coaching career. And I wonder if Ryan Day is starting to follow Nick Saban. Because in the last two coordinators, outside hires that Ryan Day has made to come into the Ohio State program, they've been failed NFL head coaches. You look at Chip Kelly, obviously didn't come straight from the NFL, but came from UCLA, didn't have a great run in the NFL, and now has hired Matt Patricia to be the Ohio State defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia failed NFL head coach with the Detroit Lions. Things went really well for him as a defensive coordinator in the NFL, but you want to rehabilitate your image a little bit, like what Nick Saban did at Alabama in the final couple of years in his career. He launched the Nick Saban School of Football Coaches who don't coach football all that good, but want to coach football good. And I wonder if Ryan Day is doing the same thing. It's on the surface, it feels like a self-explanatory common sense scenario, right? Like you take coaches who worked their way to the top, for whatever reason failed, and then you bring them in to impart their wisdom and rehabilitate their image a little bit. That makes all the sense in the world. Like, hey, I want as many good football coaches here as possible. Generally, you don't get to be a head coach in the NFL or a head coach in college football or a high-level coordinator if you're not a really good coach. So bringing in people like Matt Patricia and like Chip Kelly makes all the sense in the world. For Nick Saban, bringing in people like Lane Kiffin, like Bill O'Brien, like Steve Sarkisian, like Butch Jones. It was a common thread that anytime somebody got fired from a Power 4 job in college football, for a couple of years, it was like, okay, well, that guy's going to go on and work for Nick Saban, and then he'll land somewhere else. And if that's the reputation that you build inside the college football coaching industry, all it does is benefit your program because coaches are going to want to come coach for and with you. If you have a reputation of rehabilitating some people's images or placing them into high profile, maybe more importantly, high dollar jobs, good coaches are going to want to coach at your school, your program, and with that coach. So I think it's a really kind of a smart situation and something to emulate is saying like, hey, I saw this, like we see this all the time with like in the NFL, they will say, my chair just, yeah. All right. In the NFL, they will say, you know, it's a copycat league or whatever. Very rarely do you see the copycat kind of play into the personnel world or the off the field role. It's generally a, hey, somebody had a lot of success doing this between the white lines. We should do this. It's generally not the copycat of let's see how we should build our personnel. Let's see how we should, you know, do our strength program. All of those things that aren't necessarily the copycat things. But if you start to copy, if you're going to copy somebody, you better copy the best who's doing it. And for Ryan Day to potentially have this outlook, and I'm not just sitting here to say like, hey, I bet that he is consciously going through. I guess you can even go back to the last 3 coordinator hires from outside the staff. He hired Bill O'Brien for just a hot minute before Bill O'Brien took the Boston College job. Bill O'Brien is a failed NFL head coach, is a coach with college experience. Brought him in, didn't stay for very long, brought in almost the same exact archetype. So I think you could argue that there is a certain type of coach, a certain type of person that Ryan Day is interested in having inside his program. And when you have that, when you have the ability, and I talked at length about, you know, is there going to be another Chip Kelly type hire a couple of weeks ago where you bring in somebody that maybe just says, all I want to do is coach football. I don't want to do the fundraising. I don't want to do the recruiting. I don't want to do. All I want to do is teach football. And I think this is somewhat recognizing your weakness a little bit for Ryan Day of the more that you can have experience, wisdom, etc., but then also somebody who has done the job of head coach before, I think makes a lot of sense. Knowing that having that person on your staff matters, I think is a great idea. Then you lead into a similar situation to what other teams have tried and maybe not necessarily been super successful in. And that is the idea that you're selling to recruits, because recruits in 2025 care about two things. How much money? Three things maybe. How much money are you going to pay me in NIL? Are you going to put me in the league? And when am I going to get to play? That's kind of the three big things. And so when they're worried about, are you going to put me in the league? When you can point to, we have a former NFL head coach, a very good former NFL defensive coordinator on our staff, that's going to matter to people. That's going to matter to people. Going to matter to recruits when they're looking at your program. And so when that matters to recruits, it's important to have somebody with NFL experience. Ryan Day has NFL experience. Now his defensive coordinator has NFL experience. The offensive coordinator played in the NFL. The linebackers coach played in the NFL. And when you can have all of that experience, that matters to recruits. And I think it's just a smart way to formulate your coaching staff in 2025. It's the same thing like Deion Sanders is doing at Colorado. You bring in Warren Sapp to be your defensive line coach. Like, we got dudes with gold jackets on our coaching staff. That's impressive and important to recruits in 2025. So I know that the immediate reaction from Ohio State fans was kind of like, oh, wait, what the hell are we doing here? And I think you can often look at things from a mindset or a perspective of like, this is what's wrong with this guy instead of what's right with Matt Patricia. What's the correct? Because all you remember is things didn't necessarily go well as the Detroit Lions head coach, and things didn't necessarily go well as the Philadelphia Eagles coordinator either. Because you remember this burly beard dude with the pencil in his ear and the hat backwards and all of that stuff. He also coached really good defenses. And sometimes I think it's important to look at both sides of that. It's not necessarily just because I think the argument against it is if he was such a hot commodity, if he was so desirable, why aren't NFL teams the ones that are reaching out? Why aren't NFL teams pounding at his door to come coach our defense, please, for the love of God? I can't answer that question. But I do think it's important to look at it and go, like, Bill Belichick is the same way. Bill Belichick won a bunch of Super Bowls. And you know what? Who wants them to be their NFL head coach? Nobody. So he's the head coach in North Carolina. I don't think just because NFL teams don't want somebody or haven't made somebody a priority means that they're damaged goods or mean that they're not capable of coaching at that level, blah, blah, blah. I think Matt Patricia has shown that he can coach at the NFL level. Maybe not as a head coach, and it's okay that not everybody is going to be a super successful head coach. Sometimes that's all I need you to do is be a really good defensive coordinator. Like that's what I need from you. And if that's what you're going to provide me, awesome, primo, great, cool, fantastic. So I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you that it's a home run hire or anything like that. But I just think when you look at it on the surface of the way Ryan Day is structuring his staff or the importance he's putting on having coaches who have experience being a head coach or have NFL experience, I think that's an undeniable good way to structure your coaching staff in 2025. Want to know your thoughts? What do you think about Matt Patricia being the defensive coordinator at Ohio State? Drop your comments in the comments below. Let's have that conversation. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.